Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I received a question from one of my viewers about what are my feelings about Yom Yerushalayim. Those who don't know, Yom Yerushalayim is a holiday that's celebrated in modern Israel, and many Jewish people, particularly more of a Zionist excuse me, persuasion celebrate it as well around the world. It's a day when many Jews celebrate the reunification of Jerusalem at the end of the Six-Day War. And some people actually celebrate it with religious observances such as saying Hallel. It's a similar question, of course, as far as the 5th of Iyar, which the Zionists call Yom Ha'atzmaut, and the question of, observing that day. However, I'll tell you my personal feelings, how they've evolved through time. Now, first of all, I'm an American, I'm not an Israeli. So, I have no more of a reason to celebrate the 5th of Iyar than I do to celebrate the Bastille Day or Cinco de Mayo or something else, It's not even though I understand neither of those days are also not really Independence Days, but whatever it is, it serves no interest to me to celebrate days that are significant to other countries. I do feel significance in the American holidays, as I've explained in many videos. I can understand someone living in Israel celebrating those days as an Israeli citizen. Even if I did reside in the Holy Land, I probably would not want to have Israeli citizenship, and I personally probably would not be celebrating those days. However, I understand the people who do so, and where they're coming from, and what their intentions are. And there are many different approaches. Personally, my feelings have developed through the years. When I was younger, I often said that I understood the reasoning behind celebrating the day that they call Yom Yerushalayim more than celebrating the 5th of Iyar, what they call Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day. The reason for this is twofold. I mean, they're two different days. Obviously, they come very close to each other, just a few weeks apart. They're both in the month of Iyar. And I think there was one time in my life I actually said Hallel privately on Yom Yerushalayim when I was younger. The Yom Ha'atzmaut, I never felt any real connection to it. And I actually, for a long time, even when I identified more with certain aspects of Zionism, I always felt it proper to fast at least half the day on Iyar. Getting older, sometimes it's difficult to do that. But to recognize that it's not a total day of joy. And so too with these other aspects of the day, meaning, I know a lot of people will feel like, I'm an apologist for America and against Israel, and in a certain sense it's true. I mean, again, I don't forgive the people who are Israeli citizens to celebrate the same way we celebrate the 4th of July. Now, there are other halachic issues. The 5th of Iyar is in the middle of Sfiras HaOmer, in which it's customary to observe certain forms of mourning. And so we have to ask, is it appropriate to interrupt the mourning for this. And there are different approaches to that. But personally, I feel as follows, and this is something I learned in yeshiva from a rabbi who was, many people would consider him a Zionist. Certainly most anti-Zionists would consider him a Zionist. He probably considers himself more of a non-Zionist with some Zionistic leanings. But he said this, I don't know if I should name the rabbi. He might not appreciate me repeating something that he said publicly in yeshiva. But this one very well-known rabbi said to us, he doesn't, he can see the reason not to celebrate the 5th of Iyar, because in the Jewish tradition, there's reason to celebrate the end of a war, not to celebrate the beginning of a war. And the 5th of Iyar marks the Israelis announced that they're independent. Big deal. What happened is that all the Arab countries started a war against Israel, or really by announcing their independence, the Israelis really started the war, in which 1% of the Jewish population of the Holy Land was killed in the war. That's a big tragedy. And so that doesn't strike me as a reason to celebrate. It strikes me as a reason to mourn, because so many Jews were killed in that war that started on that day. With that logic, though, Yom Yerushalayim would seem to be a day to celebrate, because from the outside it would seem to be a more miraculous event, that they won the war in 6 days, and there was a reunification of Jerusalem. However, my views on that have changed. I remember some years ago, when I already was no longer celebrating Yerushalayim, I remember discussing with an anicle of Professor Yeshayahu Leibowitz, who was a well-known Israeli professor with a lot of controversial views, somewhat anti-Zionist but pro-Israeli, had his own philosophy that was out of the ordinary and yet totally orthodox and orthoprax. But Professor Leibowitz's grandson, who was also an activist and a lawyer, and he told me he always felt a very negative feeling about Yom Yerushalayim, and he didn't feel it appropriate to celebrate, because he said that's the day when we start to subjugate another people. It's not actually true, but I can see the sadness that he expresses in that. And that certainly should limit some of our joy, just like how we don't say the full Hallel, on the 7th day of Pesach, at least to a certain extent. The fact of the matter is, it's not we, it's not us, and there are, there were no Palestinian people. They were Jordanians and Egyptians who just decided all of a sudden now they're Palestinians. But we'll put that aside, because to me it's not really the Palestinian issue. To me, what it's really the issue is this really a miracle? The Satmar Rebbe certainly felt it wasn't a miracle. But more than the Satmar Rebbe not feeling it's a miracle, what's his name? With the one eye, who gave back the Har HaBayis, which Satmar Rebbe was very upset about. Moshe Dayan didn't feel it was a miracle. So many of the Israeli left who were the generals in this, didn't feel it was a miracle. Lyndon B. Johnson wrote before the Six-Day War that, he received intelligence from his military advisors that the Arab armies were so weak that the Israelis would probably beat them back in about 6 days. 5, 6, 7 days, something around that time frame. So it really wasn't a miracle. It sounds like a miracle, but again, why didn't, Rabbi, who was almost suicidal when all this was going on, why didn't he become a Baal Tshuva? Why didn't he recognize, look what God did? Why do all these people remain atheists, agnostics, anti-religious when God made this big miracle for them? And the answer is it wasn't a miracle. It was totally natural. The Rabbi said it doesn't matter even if they do a miracle like Joshua with the sun standing still. We still can't be fooled by these people. We still have to recognize that this is a test from heaven, just the same like other religions claim miracles. We don't deny that maybe Jesus walked on water, but so what? Just because he walked on water, even resurrected the dead, doesn't mean that we change our religion for that. And the fact of the matter is, neither did he. And most likely, really, neither did Paul. He was just, advertising something for political reasons. And so we're not denying necessarily these miracles took place, but we're denying the significance of them. It's just the same, the rabbis say that based on a passage in the Psalms, that there were miracles that happened with the golden calf. The calf ate grass and walked around and stuff, and would go moo moo. And it wasn't just a piece of gold; it actually came alive. But so what? That doesn't mean that it's an object of worship. It doesn't mean we change our religion. And so too, for 2,000 years, we are told to wait patiently for the Messiah to come, and that we are in exile. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of heretics and atheists set up a country. That doesn't mean that we change our religion over it. Now, some people do, but it's not proper in my view. Still, all that being said, if you are an Israeli citizen of any religion and you want to, in a secular sense, celebrate those days, the same thing. I don't have a problem, for example, for an Israeli to say the prayer Hanosei Shua for Netanyahu, but you don't have to make a new prayer for the state of Israel. Netanyahu is no different than any other head of state of any country. And there's nothing particularly Jewish about the state of Israel, just because it happens to be occupying land that the Jewish faith has some kind of a religious devotion to, which still even, it's a whole question whether that religious devotion even applies today. And in reality, what it really means is that we have more obligations there that we don't have in other places that are quite often difficult to keep, and it's a pretty good reason why not to go there, out of fear that there's much more opportunity to sin in the Holy Land, and even outside the Holy Land, because of the current occupation of the Holy Land. You eat an orange from anywhere else in the world, you eat a carrot from anywhere else in the world, the only thing you have to care about is, are there any bugs on it? If there's a whole bug on it, and that's it. But but you eat an orange or a carrot or a banana that grew in Israel, and maybe was imported here to America, and you don't even know where it came from, and they didn't take the tithes and offerings that have to be taken from it, you're in bad shape. You're committing a sin. You're eating something not kosher, and you don't even intend to. So it's very complicated. It's not something that we should really go out of our way to to get involved with and take that risk of perhaps not doing things the proper way, not knowing how these things are supposed to be done. The Talmud says, the Torah says very plainly, the sabbatical year, that's a big one, that the reason we're sent into exile is so the land can rest, because we didn't afford it to rest on the sabbatical years. Every sabbatical year that we violate, we have to make up in exile. And so this settlement of the Holy Land essentially is ruining our opportunities to be redeemed. It's keeping the Messiah from coming. It's preventing us from doing what we're supposed to do, and being restored and going back, because many people there are not keeping these laws, and so they're desecrating the land. Even if everyone was trying to keep them, it's quite likely that they might not be keeping them. And so it's a very precarious thing even at all to be in the Holy Land, because it's so prone to sin. You know, Hasatan abocher Yerushalayim, the Satan chose Jerusalem. It says in Zechariah. I know that's not the regular way that it's translated, but again, that's a way it can be translated. So, again, and I can understand those people, though. I understand much more those who celebrate, who celebrate Yom Yerushalayim more than those who celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, but generally it's the same people celebrating both. And I understand even ascribing religious devotions to it. I heard one particularly famous Haredi yeshiva where they actually say Hallel on Yom Yerushalayim, particularly because the yeshiva itself was saved from a bomb or something on that day. And that's their right. And you know, all throughout history, particular communities have had their own private, either family or town-wide, community-wide Purim to celebrate some salvation event. With that being said, the Brisker Rav's son, I forgot which son, once said that, can you imagine, which was a problem in Israel, and still to a certain extent, a beloved relative passed away, God forbid, and the government seized the body and planned to perform an autopsy, which is a violation of Jewish law. And you fought, and you managed to get the corpse back to have proper burial without the body being desecrated. Is that a reason to dance and sing and say Hallel? Or is that simply it's something, it's an achievement, something to be happy about, but not to like dance for joy? And so too, alright, so we have the corpse of the temple, we have the Temple Mount with no temple on it, we don't have the purity of the red heifer, we don't have all these things. It's not a reason to dance and sing. Alright, it's something. We're still in mourning. We're still in exile. And to replace and that, it's short-sighted. Again, that's my own personal hashkafa on these things, but again, I can respect that there are different people who disagree, and I can understand those who observe Yom Yerushalayim more than I understand the observance of the 5th of Iyar. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we will talk.